Recently, Todd Howard went on record to say that Bethesda wasn't going to be working on a remake or a remaster of the classic Fallout games, Fallout and Fallout 2. But he also went on to say that they were better experienced the way that they are, and I want to talk about that a little bit. I know I've talked about this in videos before. In fact, I think I made a video about how I think that there should be a remaster of them a few years ago, but Todd Howard is correct, I think, when it comes to this. And as I've grown older, I've learned that experiencing things the way that they were meant to be experienced and the way that they were released in the first place is really the way to go, especially when it comes to video games. I'm old enough now to have seen many games live their entire lifetime, have a whole series of games come out, end up not being in production anymore, and people remake them, remaster them, things of that nature. But the only reason people are doing that is because that first original experience was so good and it spoke to so many people that people are willing to dedicate their time into recreating that experience. Now, before I get started with this video, I know that there are a lot, not a lot, but at least a few mods out there that are looking to bring the Fallout 1 story and the Fallout 2 story. I don't like using the term Fallout 1, that's not what it's called Fallout, but the first Fallout story, Fallout 2 story as well, bring those into like Fallout 4's engine, things of that nature. I say more power to you. I am referring to an official release as we go forward in this video with this topic, but I think a mod of these experiences would be tremendous. I see a lot of the work that these people are putting in to these mods, and they look fantastic, and I can't wait to check them out. I first played the classic Fallout games right after the time Fallout 2 was released, the summer, I believe it was the summer of 98. Must have been the summer of 99, somewhere around that time period, but it's been a long time, all right? But around that time period, both of them were out because my friend had a copy. It was like he had both of them for the family computer. And back then, I remember the computer I had, and maybe it was just the computer I had in my room, only had enough space for like those two games, as small as they were. I think the full installation of the first Fallout was close to 600 megabytes. That could be an over-exaggeration in itself. I don't know. But that was like the full installation where you didn't need the disc. So what we would do is they would let me borrow the disc. I'd go over to my home computer. Now this was like an old computer. I would later, get a better one. I remember around the year 2000, we got our first like gateway PC, and it was in the living room, and it was like a communal PC that everybody would use. But that obviously held a bit more, but this older computer that I had only held those two games really on its hard drive, and there was no real space for anything else. But if I borrowed the discs from my friend and I installed them on that computer, a full installation, so I didn't need the disc anymore, give the disc back to them, and they were just, able to run on my PC, and I would play them all the time. One of the things that I did when I was a kid a lot was use the Falchi, I believe is what it's called, the Fallout character editor, and I just maxed all my stats out. I was like 11 years old, 12 years old at the time, and I just max all my stuff out and walk around this wasteland and really experience it and find houses that I'd be like, oh, this is where I live now, and live out in the wasteland and stuff like that. I guess nowadays you'd call that role-playing, but as a kid it didn't really feel like it. Just felt like, oh, this is where I live in the game. I don't know, like it's essentially the same thing. It just wasn't, in my, brain to, think of it as role-playing. Anyway, but I immerse myself in these worlds, and I don't want to spend the whole video sitting here talking about my history with the classic Fallout games. I've mentioned it a lot in my other videos, but it's just they've always, had a special place in my heart. And I think the reason behind agreeing with Todd Howard on this is due to that. where he may have played these games probably in college, which I'm pretty sure that's what he said before, possibly to a higher extent than I did. Maybe he played them all the time. I also played them all the time. They stick with you because of, you know, just like every game, the adventures you have through them, the characters you meet along the way, the story, how it resonates with you. And nowadays, a lot of people that are trying to get into the classic Fallout games look at it as archaic. The UI is really ancient. The way you control the game is you know, it makes sense to me because I started playing games back then, and like that was like my first RPG was Fallout 2. I did play Fallout 2 first, just because, and when I say I played Fallout 2 first, okay, because a lot of people may get the wrong idea about that. I played Fallout 2 first because when I was over at my friend's house, I see his older brother playing Fallout 2, and I was just, what the fuck is this? He was in the Temple of Trials, and I was like, what the hell is this? And then I watched him get out of there, and like he was telling me about how, you know, it's a post like atomic war America that he's going through, and the story, a loose, I imagine a loose justification of the story, a loose summary, and I was just hooked by it. I was like, oh man, this is fucking great. But I tried Fallout 2 first because right then and there when he was done on the computer, I was like, oh cool, can I try this? You know, he saved the game and I was able to check it out. The reason I ended up being able to borrow the disc is because it got so bad I'd just go over to my friend's house to be like, could I play Fallout? Because you do that when you're kids. One of my friends had a trampoline, and you know, we'd often go over there to see if we could jump on the trampoline, which when you're a kid, you're like, what the fuck, they're just using me for my trampoline, or they're just using me for my Fallout game. But kids will be kids. I don't think it doesn't matter. We're getting off topic here. Anyway, because of this, those games have a special... Oh, and what I was getting at was once I borrowed the disc, I played the first Fallout with the character editor, you know, got through everything that I needed to because I was superhuman, super character with all max stats, and then went on to Fallout 2 and did the same thing. And there was kind of guides of it, the nearly ultimate Fallout and Fallout 2 guide. I don't know if they were available yet, but they would be available soon, I think at the early 2000s. So I remember using those as a kid as well, and I recommend people use them today. But I understand that people from, you know, a newer generation, a younger generation, is going to find a lot of what classic Fallout has to offer as archaic. But I think Todd Howard is right regardless, because if you put in the time, I read, and it wouldn't, honestly, people say this to me about the Souls games, so I can understand when I say it to people, they're like, what the fuck? Because like, I'm terrible at the Souls games. I don't think they're bad games. Elden Ring, Dark Souls, you know, that series, Demon's Souls, all that kind of stuff, Bloodborne. I'm fucking terrible at these games, these FromSoft games. And my cousin's really good at them. And every time I talk to him about them, he's just like, well, just put in the fucking time to learn how to play the game, and then you know, won't have so many problems with it. And it's not that I think they're bad games, I just fucking suck at them. And no matter, like, I know that he is correct, that if I put in the time, but I just like don't feel compelled to. I guess I don't feel compelled to put in the time to learn how to do it because it's too frustrating for me. And I feel like there's a lot of that going on with the classic Fallout games. So some people may not agree necessarily with Todd Howard when it comes to the like more modern access to these games, but I'm here to argue that like I play mostly on the Steam version of the games. They have like screen settings that'll like double the sprite size and let you, I play them in 4K with 2 times the sprite size, and it looks fucking fantastic. Full screen, I've streamed it that way. If you do it on lower resolutions like 1080p or 2K, looks fucking great. It can scale to all of those things, and it looks awesome. So I really think visually, if you're not into the trimetric top-down situation when it comes to the classic games, and that throws you off, well, there's a roadblock there, I can imagine, but I think you should get over that if that is one of your issues and really check out these games. But if you find yourself like, oh man, I can't get into the UI, I can't get into how to control things. I feel like it takes a couple of hours. Like maybe you were gonna play the game. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna take a couple of hours and maybe look up the Nearly Ultimate Fallout guides, which will tell you everything you need to know. Or maybe download the Fallout character editor and just play around with the game without the fear of dying, without the fear of, anything. Because like you can max your character out to the point where like you have 99 plus action points, so whenever you get a turn, no one else is getting a turn. You can make it so your melee damage does like 1,000 each punch, so you just punch holes through any creature that comes your way. And that, I think, of course, is not everybody's way of like playing the game and having fun. I understand that, but I'm saying for people having a hard time with just learning the game, doing that, I think, really helps out. Because I remember when I was a kid, I did that all the time, and then one day I was like, oh, I'm gonna try it without that. And since I already knew how to control the game because I was just fucking around with this character editor and having this super OP character, I already knew the basics because I'd been doing that for days, just playing this game with these maxed out characters, finding every little thing I could do, passing every skill check that I needed to, and so like not only did I start to learn what these skill checks were and what was necessary for me to pass them, besides the guides, of course, that would come, like I said, maybe a little later, I would also have an understanding of how this game works. So when it came time for the actual game to show up, I already had the basics down, I already had the mechanics down. All I had to worry about was the choices being made in the game, which I think really does help when you're attempting to play these games. Now, I've talked to a lot of people from like I said, younger generations on Twitter or in the comments on YouTube or in Discord or something like that, who post and say something like, oh man, like, I'm in my early 20s, or like 18, 19 years old, and they're getting into the classic Fallout games, and they're like, oh my god, these are fantastic games. And I learned them, and yeah, it's not, typically the type of control scheme that I'm used to, or the type of, harshness that I'm used to, because Fallout can be a very harsh game as well, but again, there's difficulty settings. I play the game on easy most of the time because it's just, it can be brutally unfair. You could be just wandering through the desert and instantly get mobbed by like 20 raiders, and they all turn before you in turn-based combat. They all have a turn, and they all have like automatic weapons, and they just burst you and burst you and burst you. There's no fucking way. So save scumming is also another thing. Learn that F6 is the quick save key. Set that up early. Just bop, 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 bop. You don't have to set anything up. Just all you have to do is hit F6 pretty much anytime you enter a new map, and keep a couple of save slots, 2 or 3, and switch between those. Make one a hard save, and the other 2, alternate with your quick saves every once in a while, so that you have a decent backup as well, and you're good to go. I just think that Todd is right on this, because those games have so much charm and so much character and so much personality that remaking them or remastering them could potentially take away from that. Now, again, with something like a fan project, like a mod, that's not as big of a deal, and most of the time it seems more endearing than it does disrespectful if something isn't exactly right. Oh, well, they attempted to do this, but it is a mod, and they had to do this, and it was good. Like, say you couldn't recreate the Guardian of Forever, the encounter in Fallout 2 where you go through the portal and end up in Vault 13 before the events of the first game and accidentally break the water chip and then get transported back to the events during Fallout 2. Say that was really hard to do in like the Fallout 4 engine. I don't know if it is or not. I imagine it's not, because there's, you can just warp them to a different cell. It wouldn't be too hard. But I'm not a modder or anything like that. It just doesn't seem like a super crazy thing but let's just say it was really hard. So like, and a mod tries to do it and they don't get it exactly right. And people are like, oh, well, that's okay. You're a mod. You move on. It's like, hey, these guys, they're putting in the work. It's just cool to experience this. But if you get something that's difficult to do or difficult to translate into the Fallout 4 engine or beyond, and it's an official release, things start to get a bit more murkier, fans get a bit more upset, and charm gets sucked away from the product, because now this is an official product. Now this is an actual release of this game. It's not just go play Fallout 2 from 1998. It's now, oh, Fallout 2 2024. And, you know, it's the same kind of situation with like the GTA Definitive Edition. Now, a lot of people rejected that, but you can see where things can get murky. Like, say, if Bethesda remastered or remade the first 2 Fallout games and then delisted the classics. Not saying they do that, but that's something that can be done. And it's best to avoid it, I think. And you know, also, I think a reason Todd is not really putting any manpower, and maybe it's not his decision to put manpower into it, I don't know. But he went on record saying that you know, that's not something that they're looking to do, these remasters. It could be that they just don't even want to try. And what I mean by that is not necessarily that nobody has the passion to make that reality, but the fans get brutal about a change in 76 and, you know, like, or some lore being, you know, a couple of things being different in the TV show, some lore being changed, lore drift happening, retcons happening, things of that nature. Fans get fucking heated. So I can imagine, I can imagine that if Bethesda botched Fallout and Fallout 2 remasters or remakes, whatever it may be, that the backlash would be significant. And we've seen bigger studios get, I don't know necessarily about bigger studios, but we've seen other studios in the gaming industry do something and then have a fan backlash so bad that it literally tanks the studio. So this is just, those are a few like that there's a couple of reasons why I think that Todd's right, but overall it is genuinely the personality of the game that you get. It's I run Windows 11. I have a very beefy rig. It's top of the line gaming computer, and it runs Fallout and Fallout 2 better than it runs Fallout 3, honestly. So, and that's just the Steam version out of the box, no mods. You can run it, have your screen settings be really good, and then for compatibility situations, they do have a different modes you can run the game in. One of them is like compatibility mode. So I know that there's like other fixes for that too, but then there's also like fan patches and stuff like that that make it even more playable. I, of course, want to see these stories live forever. I, of course, want to see them from different perspectives. When I was a kid, one of the things I always thought would be amazing, like, oh my god, what if this was in 3D and like first person, you know, and you could walk around and fucking talk to everybody. And now that, you know, that's just a given nowadays with, you know, a Fallout release, like with Fallout 4 and Fallout 3 in New Vegas and 76. Everybody knew, oh, this is going to be a first person game where you can interact with people and stuff like that. But that was just a pipe dream back in the days of classic Fallout. We used a lot of our imagination to fill in the gaps that the trimetric view left for us, and I think that charm remains today when you go back and play it, because your imagination still has to fill in some of those gaps. Now, the game art and world design and character design, everything like that is wonderful in those classic games. So I'm not saying you have to fill in your imagination for that, but because it's a top-down view, because you're seeing everything in like a tilt-shift perspective, you know, it leaves a little more mystery than a big, giant, open world first-person experience. I just, so like when I hear, I honestly, I feel good about hearing Todd say, yeah, it's not something that we're really doing, and the games are better played the way they are. I like that. That's one of the first times in a while where Todd had said something and I was like, yeah, damn, that is absolutely correct in my opinion. A lot of people I saw when this was talked about, a lot of people were throwing shade like, oh, you know, they just hate classic Fallout because they didn't make it. But I think it's the best decision they could have made, is to avoid remaking those. Now there's people out there who's like, oh, I want to see Tim Kaine get back with the boys and, you know, get contracted to work on a remaster or a remake with a different studio. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about Bethesda taking a crack at remastering them or remaking them and a remake would, I would assume, would guarantee that it would be in the style of Fallout 4 as the best example. So that avoiding that, I think, is a good idea. Now, when you start talking about different studios, different people that were in the cast and crew beforehand, that's not what I'm referring to. That again, I wouldn't call that a fan-made project, but I like that. That's a different beast. You know what I mean? So my opinions on that could be different. You know, like when I say, oh, they're fine the way they are, experience them the way they are. If you could magically wave a wand and get everybody on the same page, and they were all the old, well, I don't want to use the term old, but all the people that worked on the first two games were magically in a room together, working together, everything was peachy, and they were getting paid a super good amount of money to sit here and totally rework from the ground up the first two Fallout games, that's a different story. But again, I'm still gonna agree with Todd that these games were released the way they were, and the charm, personality, and flair comes from not only their age and the approach that you have to take to them, and their brutalness, just the whole package. And if you were to remake it now, the way modern games work is different. And it's not necessarily that one's better than the other, and oh, back in my day, these games were better. Like, I'm not trying to make that point. What I'm just trying to say is, because games were different back then, it it adds to part of this foundation on why these games are perfect just the way they are. But I would really love to know your opinion on that. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I know people say that, like, in every video, let me know in the comments below what you think, but like, I'm genuinely curious, like, what other people who watch these videos, play Fallout, what they think. You know, do you want to see a remake or a remaster of the classic Fallout games? And keep in mind that we saw a leak saying that like Fallout 3 and Oblivion were getting remasters from like a court paper. As real as that could be, who knows, but it was widely accepted as being fact. When everybody saw it, nobody was like, oh, this totally, maybe somebody did say it was fake and I didn't see it, but a lot of people were saying it was a real leak. So keep in mind that a potential Fallout 3 remaster is coming, which is something that I definitely can get behind because it runs like shit on newer PCs. It runs great on the Xbox Series X. It's the best way to play it, in my opinion. Getting a remaster in, like, you know, 4K or a remake, either or, you know what I mean, and in 4K with, like, if they just redid, because they hired one of the guys who was like doing the Capital Wasteland project and did like the Point Lookout mod for Fallout 4. So and it was perfect. The Point Lookout mod for Fallout 4 is literally perfectly replicated from Fallout 3 into the engine of Fallout 4, and that was like just a couple of guys. So with all of the power of a Bethesda studio, come on, forget about it. Anyway, let me know what you think down there. Do you want a remaster, or do you think they are fine the way they are, like good old Todd does? I thank you for watching the video. It has been Mantis.